You told me to do the phone.
I did.
Oh, there it is.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Bueno. Just a real quick note here, if the restrictions are going to be tighter, we will only be televising our meetings, we won't have public attendance. So next time we post, it should say on there that we won't have attendance. If it doesn't say that, then we will. So, yeah.
Can I recommend if we do that you post the agenda, 3 days before and allow people to read it and email in if they have any questions or input?
Yeah, we can do that. Sure. Normally we post it, what, Friday? So that's 4 days. Yeah. Okay, minutes, November 24th. Is there anything on here that I didn't see nothing?
No, fine.
In there?
No,
Anything?
that's good.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept minutes as written.
Except, second.
No, I didn't
No,
make
she's
the motion.
entertaining.
You did, you're entertaining, okay.
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept the November 24th, 2020 minutes as written.
Second? All in favor. 30 seconds, all in favor. All right, all opposed, passed unanimously. Anybody here from planning? You think so? Yeah, you got people right there.
Yeah, fine.
Oh, yeah. To the city council of Sumter, John Allen, president of the planning commission. I apologize for not coming to the meeting to report personally. You've not heard, I have 3 broken ribs that are still telling me not to move. There have been no applications at the last 2 planning meetings. That has allowed us to work on making recommendations to council for amending the planning commission ordinance and the zoning ordinance. Currently, our approach is to first establish a procedure involving the city recorder, planning commission, and city council on how to handle zoning applications. There is a practice in place, but since it seems to have developed over the past decade or so with nothing in writing to actually establish it, we can't call it official. Once we have an official procedure in place, we can then recommend amendments to the zoning ordinance so that everything more or less fits together, runs smoothly, and is applied equally to all citizens. It does not appear to mean that there will be a lot of changes. We hope to have recommendations for you before your second December meeting. I would like to thank Rebecca Patterson for retyping the zoning ordinance in a format that is much easier to read and work with, and which will allow us to make changes more easily. John Young, Planning Commission. Okay, so that's our update. It's still in process. As long as we're moving forward, that's a good thing. Fire department, there's nobody here and there's nothing written. All I can say is that I know they had one EMS call. Other than that, I don't know of anything else. Let's pay the bills, huh?
Is there anything on the grant,
On the what?
the fire department grant?
Nothing yet. Well, let's see, John, you did pick up, just since we're touching on this, you picked up the plans for the,
Oh, yeah, the North Mountain Fire Department, I have those plans, and I printed out just a footprint. And I kind of scaled it out down there on the other side, south side of the shop, and it'll fit down there. And while we're talking about it, I had this really crazy idea of like moving the helicopter pad down there instead of up there. And after the cluster we missed last week, Mike called or text emailed me. I haven't returned his email yet, I should tonight, but he asked me how that was coming on getting a new pad, a different location. I'm just gonna tell him, might be a couple of years or something, or we could put a pad down there now and pad on, but that's the first road that's usually plowed because the guy's gotta get out of the shop. And that should be the first road plowed in case somebody needs a helicopter, right, Greg? So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just an idea, whatever, right now, but,
Yeah,
I do have those plans I'll bring up. I just keep forgetting to drop them by. I've got the plan and 3 or 4 pages of something I did, and I can't remember what I did now. It was last weekend.
Yeah, because I talked to Kurt, and Kurt told me that our city guys, that's the first thing that they need to do is plow us out down there.
Yeah.
Or plow them out, to where they can get the helicopter.
But if we, and another thing I was thinking,
But it was plowed.
that I ran by Renee for this grant, we should call it the Safety Center, Sumter Safety Center, something like that. Fire station, ambulance, helipad. You could also have the snowmobile club do avalanche awareness meetings or something, and the ATVs do some kind of training. I would think the more use you can get out of that building, the easier it'd be to get a grant. So that's just an idea, you know, but then you could have a nice meeting place for meetings too, you know. Make it a community thing, not the fire station, but the office part of it or whatever, have a meeting room in there.
Yeah, we'll,
So just ideas.
yeah, that's a good idea, and, once the fire chief and I go and look at a couple of new firehouses and then look at the plans and we do have to put together a use plan for the building and the property. So, those kinds of ideas, everything we can that involves community, and our volunteers gives us that much more meat on our application, so.
So did you reach out to, and talk to any of those grant administrators that they gave you names of during that call?
Did I?
Yeah.
No. Not yet.
And he said that the helipad has to be 150 feet of clear everything, which I think would mean the center of it would be 75 to 80 feet from the building. If you put it on the east side of the building. So, you know, this is,
Yeah, we're just, I mean, all these
Totally
ideas
ideas.
are great, we got to incorporate those, but we're just right at the beginning of this thing,
Yeah.
so. I'm sure once Kurt and I, have looked at some things, talked to the grant administrator, more about, you know, what's gonna be the best way to move us up the ladder as far as priority. Then we can gather all the heads together and, because we're not gonna think of all the uses, like you were saying, you know, that we could use that for. It's not the general public meeting house, it's centered around safety of the community and surrounding areas, so.
Bring Lifelight in the loop when you do that, because they'll have all kinds of information.
What's that?
Bring Lifelight in the loop, for LZ, land zone identification and what they need for restrictions, that. They've got a representative comes out and trains us every couple of years, and he's a wealth of information.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, Lifelight.
Yeah, so we'll incorporate all the HSCs and so forth in the plans, so. Yeah,
We're kind of in a fire, emergency plan for this community also would be to gather down there in that industrial zone, in the tailings instead of up here towards the fairgrounds in more trees. So with that in mind, that's kind of a more resourceful area.
Yeah,
That's what we call a safe
Yeah.
zone in the
Yeah.
fire world.
Makes a lot more sense. Let's go on to business and paying bills. Is there a question on the bills?
Yeah, Rob, can you explain anything from Becky Rock
Yeah,
on top of what we already wrote?
right. So if you recall, we got about a $25,000 bill from them. We've been making $5,000 month payments. The bill itself increased by a little over $300 related to actually services provided, and then another $120 or so due to interest.
So you wanna,
Can we go over it?
Sure.
Okay.
So actually, the story this time, usually expenses is the star of the show. Thank goodness, are the star of the show this month. If you look at the prior month collections at the very top, you'll see that we received the COVID grant that we applied for, $17,488. And that was exactly what we asked for. We also received, as expected, property taxes. Property taxes deadline is 11/15 to pay in full. And so we expect our largest chunk of the year to come in about now. And we did, so about $45,000. Some of that is restricted for the water bond. But this report is simply to show how much cash we have in the bank. And so then you can also see that we had a little more than expected on state remittances and a little more than expected on other. Just kind of miscellaneous things that came in over the month. There's really no bills that would stand out as needing to be highlighted in my mind. Buckley Law, of course, is the large one, and that's still just a partial payment on that. We still have between $15,000 and $20,000 left to go. And then total cash balance as of today is $159,571. You can find that at the very bottom of the page.
Well, how do we come along with the audit?
The audit,
Say them anything, or-
we've not paid them anything. The audit is going to be extended, to push back. Yeah. So when we found all those vendor files, we're going to need to spend some time to figure those out before we move forward.
Excuse me, there's 3 old guys stuck about 4 miles towards Granite on the side of the road, and I couldn't pull them out. I didn't have the tires to do it.
You've never had good tires. Not worth a shit.
They're going on their hike, John. Yeah.
All right, we'll put the word out.
I'll pass it on when I go by.
Hey, Jeff, are you going back up there?
Yes. Thank you.
What kind of rig are they in?
Brown Ford 2-wheel drive pickup. Probably about a 78.
Okay.
I
All right.
recognize that voice behind any mask.
Likewise, John.
The audit.
Rather extended, so.
Yeah. Anything else on,
I just wanted to ask Renee, she knows off the top of her head, Amazon, what have we been buying from Amazon?
That's where we got all the PPE stuff
Okay,
and the
So that-
computers.
that was referred.
That was all in the 17,000, yes.
Thank you.
anything else?
I make a motion to pay the bill.
Is there a second on the motion to pay the bills?
1 second.
All in favor?
Um,
Aye. All opposed?
Is
Passed
that
unanimously.
all the taxes that we got coming, or is there more coming?
Oh, no, we'll get more.
Okay.
That's about what we get for the whole year for just the water bond, that 45,000. We got some in the last month, just a little bit, for the people that paid early. And then we'll get, you know, you have your choice of paying it all at once or 2/3 and 1/3 and then 3/3. And so we'll get some at each of the other deadlines.
Next issue, Shirley Carey is handy.
We've got to do the election results.
We will. No, this is still our business. Yeah, still our business. Oh, so is that, yes, it is. This has to do with bills, so we'll skip that. Shirley, lives outside of town. She has been, or Candy, been coming in and filling up the tanks in the back of her truck for water. She lives at Bear Gulch. And, she, went ahead and made arrangements to get her water from another source. She did have an account with us. She did not, let us, or notify the city when she made other arrangements, which was middle of October. She got a hold of us today and that she got another water bill and, informed us of when she, quit getting water. So that would have been middle of October, and she is current, is that correct, up through that time on her bill? Okay, so last month and a half's bill, she hasn't been utilizing our supply of water. So we have options of one, making her pay the bill, because she just notified us today to close the account. We can retroactively close the account from the date she informed us quit using and made the arrangements. Thoughts?
This is the problem with them filling the water, which we've discussed before. How do we know she really quit in October?
I mean, we can verify it by talking to the person that she was made that
Yeah,
with, but she's always been current, she's always been very upfront.
okay,
Uh,
I don't know, so.
yeah, so,
And I physically seen them home, not everybody.
Okay.
That's when they had snow. Because I pushed them off the road with the building. Nice job, Charlie. Perfect.
So you make a motion to terminate Shirley Carey's bill account.
As of,
remember you worded that, we read
as
that.
of,
Oh, excuse me,
Yeah.
as of October 15th, 2020.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, so what that results in is we are closing her account retroactively to October 15th. She was current as of that date. And, that issue's finished. One more, financial issue. Renee, would you like to inform us of the discussion we had with the deposit for the?
oh, yes, there was a wedding in the June buys, and they have decided with COVID and all that not to have it here. And they had paid their refundable deposit or their non-refundable deposit, but they have not processed any of the paperwork. It hasn't come before council. So they were asking if they could just get it back because of all this volatility.
Is that's the one I took from, so they were gonna reschedule for
No,
next
no,
June?
this is
different wedding?
Different,
Okay.
yeah. The June wedding, that was postponed
Oh,
is still
Still
going,
going,
yeah.
okay.
So they made
This
the
is a whole
deposit.
new one that didn't come through or anything.
Yeah, they made the deposit before they did the paperwork.
Mm-hmm,
And how much was that deposit?
$100.
$100 deposit. I mean, this is nothing new over this year. We had the flea markets that we had similar issue. Discussion on making an exception on the non-refundable policy on this particular item, especially since it hasn't gone through the normal paperwork channels because no paperwork has been filed.
Well, it's not like they canceled just because they were inconvenient or they changed their mind. And I think COVID kind of puts us in I mean, it's supposed to be non-refundable, but they can't have it because of COVID. Then it's kind of tough to tell them no when we giving other people relief from the bill.
Right. Any other thoughts? To me, it's a no-brainer. You know, one, when she came in to get the paperwork this way, I understand the course of advance. When she came in to get the paperwork, she went ahead and paid the deposit, even though she was just picking up the paperwork. So,
Well, I might make a motion that we refund the $100 non-refundable wedding deposit because of COVID.
second,
I'll second
Linda seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Passed unanimously, so let's do that. Okay, election results.
I gave you the paper.
Yeah, the paperwork. I do. You do.
I gave you the letter that says what you. Did you leave it on your desk? You left it on.
Not mine.
Yeah, I think you did. Rob, while we're waiting, did you have anything else?
No.
Thank you very much.
You can take a copy that says mine.
Okay, from the Baker County Clerk.
To the Baker
To
County
the
Clerk.
Baker County Clerk, here's Stephanie Kirby, the City Council of the City of Sumter, meeting in regular session on December 8, 2020, formally accept the abstract of election results for the election held November 3rd, 2020. The City of Sumter accepts these results in accordance with ORS 255.295, parentheses 1 and parentheses 2. Elected were Greg Lucas, Mayor, Martin Lewinberger, council member, seat number 1, it was a write-in. Marcia Damaris, council member, seat number 3. The city will prepare the appropriate certifications of elections to be awarded to the council members elected to the above offices, and these certificates will be distributed at the January 12, 2021 council meeting. So that's where we stand there. Do we have the letter of acceptance from any of these three?
You don't have to have a letter of acceptance. They were on, you guys were on the ballot. I do have Martin's SL,
That's attached.
SEL form.
Okay.
So you just need to make a motion to accept the,
Election results.
right, but what is the term in there?
The abstract of the election results. Do we have a motion to accept the abstract of election results as? Nobody wants to.
Okay,
Both words are too long for
I
me.
make a motion that we accept the
Abstract of the election.
results of the elections as sent out from
County Clerk.
county clerk.
And I'll second.
Charlie seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Okay, update on water, sewer, and vacate. Everything's still in process. We have finished up the council's restructuring and rewording of the sewer ordinance. That will be retyped and then forwarded to the lawyers at Legal Run Cities for perusal. Tomorrow morning, we have a workshop, 9:30 for the water. And we're still gathering info. We just got some more mapping today on the vacates, so those are still in process, but hopefully tomorrow we can take care of the water ordinance and then move on to focus on the vacates. So,
Is that all you're gonna do tomorrow's water?
yeah,
It's gonna take a long time.
yeah. Yeah, so.
Yeah, if you recall, it was way after my lunch hour.
So we're gonna bring it back to Tootsie Rolls for Charlie.
It's still open.
No, I'll make the city by lunch if it goes over.
Okay. All right, Mike, you have something.
Yes,
you wanna-
and the subject is the,
Can you stand?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm sorry, please. Introduce yourself.
Here,
Oh, here, I'll call you.
Okay. The Snowmobile Club's been trying to push these sled races over in the fairgrounds for quite a while. We had one last year and it was very, very successful. But with this year with the COVID thing, we've been walking softly on trying to figure this out. And when I read through the restrictions, the 50 people restriction, there's something that glaringly stands out. and that is, as I mentioned to Charlie, what's the footprint of the school? I can put 50 people in a 1,400 square foot house and have every single have 6 foot spacing. So I said, well, we're going to be doing this in the fairgrounds, and we got so much room that I don't understand the problem. Not to mention the other numbers that I've left in there about churches having 150 outside and bystanders coming by. What's that all do to the numbers? So I mentioned a couple of people. I was going to go down to the health authority down at Baker and say, hey, what gives here? So I went down there this morning, and Nurse Lori, there at the health authority, I talked with her, and I said, hey, what gives here? These numbers don't make any sense. It's too vague. And I talked to her about the 50-person limit, and she says, after the course of the conversation, we briefed with this, and you guys don't have a problem as far as the COVID spacing and social distancing is concerned. You got so much room out there, you just warn people to say, hey, try to maintain your social distancing, and don't stand around and gather in groups. And at first I talked to her, I said, well, okay, so as long as there are 50 people in full below, we're fine. But I was more concerned about the bystanders, people that come in off the street just want to come and watch us. And I said, I have no control over that. I can't do anything about that. That'd be just like going downtown Baker City and seeing a church outside with 150 people and everybody's spacing, and I walk by with my family or half a dozen other friends along the sidewalk and stop and watch the proceedings. I'm a bystander. So she says, yeah, you don't have a problem. He said, so I said, okay, so I'm sitting there scratching my head. I said, so I mean, as long as we got good quality social distance or the opportunity to have social distancing, we don't have a problem. So we could have 100 participants out there and not have a problem. And she said, yeah. She said, just tell everybody to try to maintain their social distancing, and that's all you can really do. And tell them not to congregate in groups. So they go, just as I was about ready to leave and I was convinced that we could do this, he says, oh, by the way, there is no COVID police. There's nobody going to come up there and shut you down. There's no police that's going to shut it down. So the bottom line is, what's the risk to the public? I think it's minimal risk. So what I'm asking from the council and the mayor is to say, let us continue on our plan, because the caveat to this whole thing is, what's the state going to do? As you mentioned earlier, if the restrictions get tighter, it may shut us down. But right now, we can research and do the research on the insurance, make sure the city is not liable for nothing for whatever insurance we get, and move forward. So that's all I'm asking from the city right now is just let us continue on this thing with the possibility of having the sled races, with the caveats of insurance and restrictions not getting any worse. I hope to God we have snow on the 9th and 10th of the month of January, which our shooting date is. They're planning on having the circle races like they did last year, but they also want to interject some drag races, which may mean, and I don't know all there is about this, it may need a more costly insurance to do drag races. So right now, just asking for the city to say, hey, yeah, press on. We'll lock up the 9th and 10th of January, and we'll play this out. John will come and present insurance and whatever we have as things go along, as we get this thing chiseled and drifting sand as far as insurance is concerned. And hopefully, with no risk to the city, we won't allow that to happen. Let's have a sled races. That's my pitch.
Any questions?
No, because I think the big issue is the insurance, and if you guys are gonna
Yeah.
make sure everything's insured where it sees.
Yeah, I did talk to John, and I said, we have to do this. We can't put the city at risk.
Yeah.
And I also asked the nurse, I says, hey, is the insurance companies tied to the law? In other words, Charlie and I talked about this. If it's illegal, will the insurance underwrite it? And both of us said, well, probably not. Well, the nurse says, I don't think it's tied together. What the insurance company is interested in is the activity that you've got, is it going to be covered? What you're doing, are you being covered by the insurance? That's all I care about. So,
Yeah, that's what I have no problem going with
Yeah.
Of insurances.
Yeah.
So is that something we have to make a motion on?
Yeah, we gotta move on.
When is it, Mike?
Pardon me?
When is it?
So there might be only one day, there might be two events. One being the circle races, the other one being the drag races. But the cool thing about this is that the club that came last year, that sponsored it for us and put it up, they said, you have the absolute perfect. You've got the room, we can cut this trail, we cut the drag race strips, we can cut the circles, and it's perfect, you got the room. So we don't want to lose the opportunity to continue with this, but at the same time, we don't want to violate the law and get our butts in a ringer.
I'm not so concerned about, well, is it the same group that was here last year?
There was 60, I asked John this morning after I got off from the Oregon Health Authority, I asked him, how many people were there under 50 participants and management of this thing? He says, no, we had about 65 to 75 of those. But the way the nurse was saying, he says, she was up here last year. She stood underneath the heater trying to stay warm. Well, you guys don't have a problem. He says, because the participants are out there in the field, either with helmets or bodysuits on, and they're getting ready to race. They're not congregating together. The only people that are probably congregating the most is the initial registration of the event. Everybody else, as long as we get the place, assuming we got snow, cleaned out enough, we've got quarter a mile of room out there where people can spread out. And what was said was, all you gotta be concerned about is to make sure we post, maintain your social distancing. Best you can. Because it's not, it's like a grocery store, it's like going into a retail store or anything else. Just don't hang around people, so.
Now, along with the insurance, you want to try to get also proper facilities for like going to the bathroom?
Well, certainly that's gonna have to be an issue, yes.
So that.
And I would have to defer that with, John as he gets a little better and comes in, because you can get that a week out. You can get, but yeah, you gotta be able to support the people some way. And there's no reason why you can't have, I don't know about this. Hot chocolate or coffee, I don't know about that. I can't answer that. But as far as the race is concerned, that's all I'm kind of pushing for is the dates, and let us keep working on it, and keep the city council informed.
Is it might be vendors? What are you doing for medical personnel on site?
It shouldn't be any different than last year,
Which was,
I think we had our local, Sumter fire station standing by. Did we not?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, glad to see you. I don't think, the other question that came up was transportation. You know, do we have to have an ambulance out of Baker here? Well, we didn't do that last year. All we had to have is pretty much first aid. Treat it like normal EMS call-outs. Vendors are concerned. You know, everything else we're dumbing down this year. Our drive-by parade, no tree lighting ceremony per se. We're gonna even try to have our poker run, but it's dumbing down too, big time, just to comply with it. So, like I said, the only thing I'm really requesting here is to the dates. 9 to 10, lock it up for that, and let us continue with our planning, and I'm sure John and, well, Kurt and Terry are both involved heavily in this thing, so they can bring things into play as things come along. But John with broken ribs, I think he planned this. Let me come up here. Anyway,
I would encourage you, if you can, what you decide here, to think outside the box. Last year we didn't have this problem. If vendors do decide they wanna, or sponsors do decide they wanna show up, a footprint plan where they're spread out so the spectators or the participants aren't all congregating when all the vendors are there. Signage is important. When people get outside, they get real lax about it because there's fresh air, might be breeze.
Exactly.
But still, if you're within, in fact, I was watching somebody, we were talking in front of the window over here. I was completely surprised at the glistening water drops being ejected.
Oh, from
Just
people's,
from normal conversation.
sure, sure.
You know, so, and whether we agree with the stipulations, laws, quasi-laws, doesn't really matter. You know, the government entity, our responsibility is to honor those and espouse those. My concern is secondary for the participants. So
Okay.
my first concern is for the residents of this town.
Okay,
So I would only ask that when people show up, there be an organized meeting for participants and their families.
mhm,
And, you know, please honor the mask. If you're going into the store, if you're staying at the hotel, interaction with, you know, town residents,
Absolutely.
that kind of thing.
absolutely.
So,
Well, the way I look at it, and I leave out a lot of stuff because I make an assumption, but I don't know what that is. That we will have the social distancing, that we will be wearing masks, will be posted, because I mentioned that. I conveyed to John my conversation with Health Authority in Baker, and I said, we've got to comply. You know, the biggest thing on all the numbers and all the restrictions, all talk about social distancing. It's really what the numbers are all about, social distancing. Trying to come up with a blanket answer for social distancing. 50 people, 150 people, 100 people or 25% or whichever is less. They're just trying to shotgun it. Well, being responsible citizens, we want to post it. We want to inform people, let them know that, you know, we have this event. You've been given the opportunity to do it. Try to maintain your social distancing. Don't stand around in groups. Wear your mask. And if you do have members, that's going to be a limited footprint for them too. So we could probably only have maybe 2, maybe 3 members up here because of the place, the area clearing out for parking. So that's limited in itself.
So I could make a motion that the Snowmobile Club can have their sled races on January 9th and 10th as long as they follow the current Oregon COVID restriction guidelines.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry.
What about restrooms though?
Well,
They just talked about that.
Okay, I missed it, sorry.
yeah, we're gonna, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to be standing out there. That's a long ways to run.
Wasn't there a contingency by insurance?
So, for sure.
Pardon?
Wasn't there a contingency by insurance on that?
Yes, there is, it is contingent on insurance, and it's contingent on follow-up restrictions.
And, yeah, and follow-up, and contingent on the follow-up, insurance and current COVID restrictions.
And certainly the insurance, we're gonna bring that to the city council and say, this is what we got, are we good to go?
You want that redone?
Mike, did you know that?
Okay.
So Marcia
Did you know about the
is making a
insurance?
motion.
I do not, I know it's
Marcia, make your motion.
CIS, and that's who insurance
Point of
last
order.
year.
But did you know
Point of
about
order.
the 22nd?
We have a
We
motion on the
got
table.
a motion on the table.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna make a motion that the Snowmobile Club on January 9th and 10th can hold their sled races as long as they follow the current COVID restrictions and the contingency on the insurance.
Charlie seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? All right, Mike, go ahead and then, for the next council meeting towards the end of the month, let's reevaluate and see where we're at.
Okay,
That'll be the 22nd.
I'm saying, okay, I'll bring John the loop.
All right, thank you for that. Let's see, Tony had asked me yesterday, where they put the Christmas tree this last year. It's not available this year. And to try to have whatever types of normalcy that we can and still be respectful and honor the gathering restrictions and so forth, she requested that we put up a community Christmas tree without ceremony between the Wright House and the museum on that part of the museum property. No functions around the tree. It'll just be the 3, 4, or 5 people that normally decorate or anybody else who wants to show up. But it's just for visual. There's there won't be any organized gathering around that tree. So I told her I'd bring it up to council and we can air our concerns and
Where they're going to put it up, is it going to be forward enough that it won't block the access to the two propane tanks back there?
Yeah,
The one to the right house and one to the end.
right,
You come
and
into the
they
propane
can
tanks from behind.
actually still access around.
Okay, because they'll need to be plowed out on the backside so they can get in there.
Which,
Yeah, and then all we gotta do is, we'll have to go down and make a mark where we gotta go, because there is a power line that goes from to the, library.
yes, yeah.
But it should go in between. Naturally, after it's, we need to figure out where we're gonna put this tree and make sure it's in a safe spot, mark it, and then locate has to come up and do locate before you can dig a hole.
we're not planning on digging a hole.
What are we gonna do, Tony?
We're gonna use a big tire, so,
Oh,
It's going to be a smaller tree than normal. So, but yeah, so we won't have to, break into the ground to do anything. We gotta make sure it's stable enough that it doesn't topple over.
we've also got that, ball mill there, that big steel thing.
Mhm.
Put it on.
Yeah, so you're thinking put it closer to the wall and not so much centered out in that
We
opening?
honestly hadn't decided that
Okay.
until we see it.
there's enough room where you put it in the middle of that, between the two buildings, and have room to get around one side or the other.
Does that require a motion too?
Yes,
Charlie?
it's being city property,
Yeah, you're, the alley
Yeah,
that's behind the
between
Lynn's
the gallery,
yeah.
yeah, because that's.
Right, that's the true access to John's place and to the propane tanks and also to.
How big of a tree are we looking at, Kurt, you think?
12 to 15 feet.
So it's not gonna have that big a footprint.
Right.
It's, you might have, diameter of that thing 10 feet maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you.
Well, the nice thing about putting it on city property is that's where it should go, because we've moved the tree, this will be the fourth time we've moved it since I've been here.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you start figuring out that we can have it on city property, then we can figure out what we're gonna do, and then on top of that, the power to run it, somebody else, because as far as I know, the private entities that, on the private property this was on before, they have to pay the bill. And as far as I know, nobody else came forward, said, hey, here's $20 for the power bill to be running our lights. Mike Davison did it, Kathy did it, and now, Cindy's done it. So going either plugging into the White House or plugging into because we're paying that.
Is there any other, concerns, about, as presented? Did we stay within those descriptions?
Well, because the thing is too, is Baker County did it, Baker City did it. Because I watched the tree going in before I seen it, and they put up their great big tree. But there was no volunteers or nothing there. The city boys are actually the ones who went decorated. There was a crew of 4, 2 in each truck.
And Tony, I would only stipulate that, because there are some very energetic, community members, business owners in town, that might want to take advantage of that tree for gatherings for people they might represent or entertain. That you would, as council, we'll put that out there, that the tree is only for decoration, it's not a gathering place.
Right,
But we'll kind of leave that up to you to police that.
okay. So not having any requests, discussion about that. So I'm hoping that we'll make sure that we put the word out and keep an eye on it.
Okay.
And make a motion that we can put up a city Christmas tree between the museum and the White House on city property following COVID restriction guidelines in a safe manner,
As presented.
as presented.
And if you need a GFI outlet installed, call me.
I'll
Linda seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
second it.
All opposed? Merry Christmas, City of Sumter.
Now, Tony, do you know, because once again, this is something we have a lot of hearsay. Are they gonna try to do a bazaar?
I honestly don't know.
Because I've heard about this and it's like, because that's something that now you have a gathering
Right.
and usually it's in a building.
Well, I've heard the rumor too going around, if it is, it's on, private property. And
Well,
they,
as long as it's on private property and not on business property.
no, they won't be on business properties that I
Should not
know.
be
I just
listed.
heard that they were talking about it.
I mean, I wasn't even approached about the museum, which I normally was head of.
Right, well, I figured if anybody would know, maybe you might.
Yeah.
But that's all what ifs and rumors, we don't know, it hasn't been
Nothing's
brought up.
nothing's been presented to council.
So-
I don't think that they plan on presenting anything to council. They understand that there can't be any, congregation of vendors, that kind of thing. They're not trying to get spectators for not a parade. Just to clarify that, last I heard, it's
Really?
people in their four-wheelers, side-by-sides, and, cars, trucks, they're decorating them,
It's just a group
they're
gathering.
brought to driving down the road.
Yeah.
No burn barrels, nothing organized like we normally do.
As far as the bazaar is concerned, this past weekend, I talked with she who is kind of poncho on that. As of that day and the week before, she only had 4 people call back not having a booth. And it was all gonna be on private property.
Honestly, I know nobody's asked for that.
Yeah, and Kurt, has the fire department been requested to be in the parade?
One truck, yes, has been.
What's your response to that?
Well, it's not all my decision, so, it is city property, the trucks. I think we were taking up the rear is where I was asked to be in the parade. I don't know that much about it. If there's a lot, if there's 10 vehicles or what?
Last I heard, there was 12 groups.
The city, I have a hard time with that just because of the
Right, just
perception
it's not
of
12
city
people.
sanctioned vehicles.
So there might be 2 or 3 rigs in a group. So it could be like we have all the time.
Well, I just wondered like the 4-wheeler club.
Well, there is no such thing as a 4-wheeler club. There's a bunch of 4-wheelers that get together, but it's not a club because they choose not to be a club because they don't want to deal with insurance.
The fire department took count at the Halloween event. What was the count for the Halloween event?
We had 607 children and 0 people from, but I don't think we had the same restriction.
No.
So normally,
Around 700 people.
We were in phase 2
normally on
and
the
not
parade,
phase 1.
I'll go out and get the insurance. And I have to have people sign a form, release form. And we have to talk to the Department of Transportation, get released to drive on the highway or the Main Street. Well, we don't have a problem anymore, sort of, kind of. I mean, we still have to comply with the safety rules for driving side by sides and quads and that thing. As far as a quad, you're gonna have to wear a helmet. You guys have all read that. So when the sheriff was talked to, they said, just do what you need to do. When the insurance company was contacted, no, the way you're doing it, it's not an issue. It's just a bunch of people driving down Main Street. That's all it is. Just happened to be that the side-by-side and the quads are decorated.
Yeah, we've done it for 40 goddamn years.
Exactly.
You know?
That's exactly
The only
right.
fire department's done their shit for 40 goddamn years
Exactly
too.
The only stipulation of that would be, we were informed, it was presented to council that ODOT had been contacted. didn't have a problem with it. At the time that I called, they hadn't been contacted by anybody. As long as it was not requested for a road closure on the state highway, they're not involved. My only concern is if there's groups of vehicles where they're staging at. Are
The
they
stage
gonna-
will be off highway.
Yeah, are they gonna be blocking our streets? Are they?
Well, if
gathering
you
on-
talk about west of Mill Street, yeah, but how much traffic?
Well,
is on it?
that's a blocked street anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the plan, is to run the route back on that side of the street. Get everybody line up behind them, and when 5 o'clock hits, it's gonna be like, the big gong goes off, or the air horn, and we're gonna just truck down Mill Street. We get down to Auburn, they'll disperse, and that'll be the end of it. They're Austin.
I would consult somebody that lives where they want to stage. Do you have concerns about that, having access to your property or?
Well, no, we're gonna stage at the north of the town.
They're just breaking up.
Oh, you said.
They turned it around.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're coming north to south. They're gonna go.
So where are they gonna stay?
So, I was told, and I forgot, but it's like Sumter Street.
It's at Mike Ballard's.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's gonna go across and around the corner, but it's, the staging time,
I don't care.
because we don't have the signed forms, there's no releases, it's like, I would tell everybody, and if I had the opportunity, but somebody else is doing the other thing, I said, show up 15 minutes, 4:45, get in line, 5 o'clock, we're gonna hit the horn, and we're gonna motor down Mill Street, and when we get to Austin, we got the- when we get to Austin, it'll disperse.
I guess I
Yeah,
don't understand why this is even coming to council. It's private people gonna drive up the street. And it's not involving the city's permission.
Right.
It's private people.
And last year, there have been people come up, hey, can we do this thing? Well, this year, it's city people and friends. Get in line, drive down the street, there's no DOT restrictions there. We've
It's
got
legal to
people.
ride on Mill Street now too.
Yes, and that's the other thing,
So
so,
only stipulation would be, since it's not a sponsored or organized event, okay, you got the people coming through town, you either incorporate them in your line or let them by.
well, I come back to the new rule. Driving down Mill Street, side by side or car. The new rules are there in place. You gotta go the speed limit, you gotta do what you're supposed to do. That's approved. We're not in conflict with traffic. Now, my personal opinion is, if you're going slower than 70 or zip, you need to clear the road for traffic. But for the 10 minutes that we're gonna be there, at 5 o'clock at night on Saturday next weekend, it ain't an issue.
Yeah, especially if you're not gonna do what they did before, where we had the lineup.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah, we're not-
everybody had the paperwork, you had that.
yeah, we're not even lining up on that. We're off the line.
I would request that we use the new sign that we have to post, maybe close to, Bose or
She's shaking her head no.
It's a COVID sign right now.
only then place one of the fire trucks down there just to slow people who have no idea this is going
So you
on.
can put flares out,
Some,
but fire department, that's up to council, because it's a city.
Josh, I hate to, I wanna say, keep it simple, guys. It ain't that big a deal. We're talking 10 minutes down the road.
I don't think it's gonna be that big of a.
No.
Saturday at 5 and
Yeah,
hopefully
get a
it's
grip on
7,
yourself.
I look at it this way, Kurt, don't you have a training thing at like quarter to 5, 5:15 that you were telling me about?
Yeah, no, we can do that, guys, yes.
Yeah.
Because the fire department would be responding,
To the
no
flare,
other direction.
we're one to the flares that we did.
A deer stumbled in the road or something and.
I just don't think it's a problem. I mean, it's,
No.
it's not. The city's
I
not.
don't understand why we're talking about it.
I think it's banned.
Yeah, well, it's good to know what the plan is.
Yeah, and the only thing I know about the lineup, and I'm convinced that it's gonna be off highway, off Mill Street. It'll be off on the side on the north of the town, to the west, on those side streets there. We'll figure it out. The whole thing is kind of like the trunk or treat. We had so many people come up and say how glad they were that somebody's doing something. And the same thing that's gonna happen here is that, you know, shoot, we can have another half a dozen people come up from the baker because it's bored to death and just get in line.
But you're not gonna have as many people because the train isn't running, so that's not bringing that in.
Yeah, and then the spectatorship and that kind of thing, which is where my concern
It's
is.
more of a city thing and
I don't
just
see
let it
that, yeah. I don't see that happening. We're not doing the burn barrels. We're not blocking the highway. We're just going slow down the highway for a very brief period of time.
Quite frankly, there's no reason why you couldn't have a burn barrel.
Yes.
And you could sprace them out, and that keeps people apart.
Once again, somebody's gotta come up with toilets.
We never do when we have our normal
Businesses
business.
are open during that time, and we always have those bathrooms at the park open also. Businesses are closed, and you can't go in.
You know what? We
It's a
had the same
5-minute
issue with the
drive.
trunk or treat.
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing the tree ceremony.
Yeah.
Okay,
5
we're not
minutes.
You're talking about tops 20 minutes.
Yeah, we're not
So
presenting.
if you came and happened to go to the bathroom, you did something wrong.
Folks, we need to get back to respecting when somebody's talking, out there who
I'm
is.
sorry.
Let's not interrupt. Okay, it just creates havoc. So, just a second. We're not doing any of these events. The only thing we're doing is, or what you're presenting is people gathering just to do a little celebratory, Merry Christmas drive. Okay? We're not doing any sponsored things around it. We're not presenting an opportunity for people to gather around anything. I don't have a problem with it. So, but I think we've talked through, we kind of know what the plan is, don't see any issues. Not that I've heard we've addressed those questions and so forth, so, there's nothing we need to vote on there. So, but we do appreciate being informed. That's part of the council and the public together and troubleshooting, so we're all on the same page.
But
Because it is taking place within public arena on public property, which is what the streets are.
And I'm quite frankly, I'm kind of surprised that